Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. My name is Denim Waura. I am the Assistant Director at Gallery 400. Thank you for coming to our first 2024 Voices Lecture Series with artist Marcela Torres. It's great to welcome them back here to Gallery 400 and back in Chicago, where they were the gallery's public programs manager a couple of years ago. And today, Marcela will discuss their performance practice and how they incorporate ideas related to ritual and performance in it. Also protection as well, too. And for the past 25 years, the Voices Lecture Series has featured timely ideas and significant artists, critics, writers, designers, curators, and historians who engage audiences in their creative and conceptual practices. The Voices Lecture Series is made possible by the UIC School of Art and Art History, and the lecturers who are nominated by both UIC faculty, staff, and also us as well too, conduct studio visits with MFA students during the visits. And so following Marcela's presentation, you're welcome to engage with them during a Q&A session. I know that some of you will leave at 1:40, but if you're able to stay, please do. So I'll talk a little bit about Marcela. Born in Salt Lake City, Utah, and residing in Brooklyn, New York, and Chicago, Illinois, Marcela Torres received a BA in Sculpture Intermedia and a BFA in Art History from the University of Utah. They continued their studies with an MFA in Performance from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Torres has performed at the Bemis Center for Contemporary Arts in Omaha, the Momentary in Bentonville, Arkansas, Fringe Festival in Detroit, Michigan, Experimental Actions in Houston, Performance Space New York in New York City, Time-Based Arts in Portland, Oregon. And Marcela has exhibited work at Recess in Brooklyn, New York, Hyde Park Art Center here in Chicago, the University of Wisconsin, Parkside University, which is at Kenosha, Tropical Contemporary at Eugene, Oregon, and Petzl Gallery in New York City. In 2022, Torres was a Chicago Dance Maker Forum lab artist, an artist industry resident at the John Michael Kohler Art Center, and a fellow at Franconia Sculpture Park. In 2023, they were an IACA artist, fellow in performance-based arts, and in 2024, they exhibited a project at Recess with their assembly program and a solo exhibition at Arts and Public Life. They are a full-time assistant professor at SUNY, Old Westbury, teaching performance and visual arts. Please welcome Marcela with a round of applause.
It's kind of fun to have someone read that because it's just like garble, you know? Like this location, that location. Hi, Biali, hola, hello. I'm excited to be invited back to Gallery 400 and UIC. I worked here for a few years, and so I feel like really connected to this community and to public universities in general. I want to start here, though. This is a photo, the first photo of my great-grandmother when she came to the US. She left Mexico and decided to move to Salt Lake City, Utah. And while there, she became a Latter-day Saint Mormon and married other Mexicans who came to the US to build railroads. On my mother's side, her family, they were already Mormons in Mexico, which is crazy. And they came from Jalisco to the US as agricultural workers known as braceros, and they settled in California picking grapes and tomatoes. I grew up in Utah. We were surrounded by mountains and significant natural entities. I always felt like an innate ringing of being detached from part of myself and my culture, yet realizing that what I did have was a body and a desire for attachment. There's something so intense about nature. It's often like, oh, I'm so pretty, but I can kill you at any moment. I will send the flood. I will make it so you don't have any water. I will fall on you. I will make an avalanche. At any given point, it can tell you, I'm in control. And I felt as though my body and the natural entities, there was something about the desire of being part of them. as somebody who's part of a Latin diaspora, I think there's a stretching that goes on, like a stretching with the relationship of being Mexican or brown or indigenous. I wouldn't say like it's just like removal, but a stretching, because sometimes there's a long distance, that we have lost our languages, that we have no relationship to the Tonapoali, that we don't know what brings us here. But then there's also this stretching that comes back, that brings us forward. In these moments of constraint, often they're because of assimilation. When my family became Mormon, we didn't know anything about Catholicism, which is also about like somewhat is part of Mexican culture as well, but then we were relayed to a completely different religion. And through that assimilation, a lot of my family stopped speaking Spanish as well. And we lost our indigenous cosmologies, yet there are moments of closeness, of feeling or finding these entities. Am I glitching, or can you hear me? Okay. So I want to tell a quick story. So I live in New York right now, and I have other brown friends. And one day we were at a bar. There's 3 of us. And I have one friend who's like a trans-Peruvian person, and then a Mexicana. And we were sitting at this bench, and this person came up to us, and they were like kind of drunk, and they like were looking for other brown folks. And they were just like, oh, hey guys, like, can I sit with you? And we're like, okay. And they proceeded to talk at us, just like they were looking for some kind of acceptance. And it was really interesting because this person was like a Texan, and my mom's a Texan. But this person just ignored me. They didn't want to talk to me. They were looking towards like the people who gave them signs of indigeneity. They were looking for those people to accept them. And they were completely ignoring me. And I was like, I immediately got in my head, because I grew up in Utah. And I'm like, it's because I look like this. It's because I'm not a real, this, you know, like I got in my head about what was happening. And then eventually, like my friend Valentina, who's like also Mexican, she was looking at me and she was getting really uncomfortable too. And then this person had they had traveled to Bolivia and they got this tattoo of people who were experiencing homelessness in Bolivia on their leg. And so it was indigenous folks who were experiencing homelessness on their leg, and we were all like, what is this person? And afterwards, it was really interesting because I was thinking about the way that we are stretched, and it creates all these kinds of trauma of colonialism. You know, each person in this group was trying to connect with each other or was confused about how our relationship of brownness brings us to each other or apart from each other. She was looking for acceptance from the other people because they grew up in another country. But then the other people were extremely uncomfortable because they were either being objectified and or being hit on in a way that they also feel conflicted with. Like ideas of indigeneity are really complicated because even Valentina, who's from Mexico, you know, her mother's white. And so then we get all these like moments and we're just in this vat of maybe we're all brown, but we don't know how to like understand one another, even if there's the desire for that. In my early work, I was really interested in what it was like to be in my body. I was looking for ideas of strength. I think in growing up in Utah, there was like such a disempowerment that I thought that if I trained to learn how to fight, I would be able to overcome those things. Some of these initial works were games and experiments about how we see the binary of bodies and different kinds of bodies. When they're fighting with each other, what do we expect will happen? I also thought about like, what is the material of fight? You know, what are the objects that remind us of like the structures that we're fighting against or within? And there was a level of praxis where I was like, if I can physically learn how to fight, maybe in some way there will be some strength that will provide me towards some self-understanding. So I had 2 fights, and it was wild. Nothing like having a bunch of strangers watch you get beat up. And this work led to, again, these materials. Thinking about what it means to be impacted in the body is one thing, but these training objects often are to look at bodies. They're supposed to be like bodies. So this is a series of boxing equipment that have embedded speakers. So then they're on a loop, and when you hit them, you can record them. So if we think about like the body itself, like we can say, ow, that hurt, but like what is it to replicate or to have like a real record of what this body has incurred? This work, these objects were part of a larger work called agentic mode, and agentic mode is this, it's really weird because I've been thinking about it more, this term that I found in a book, and how it relates to our current moment, because it's a term we use to describe the psychological phenomenon of what it feels like to go into war. Essentially, to be an agent, you become nationalized, and you begin to do things that you wouldn't do otherwise. You would do things that the nation asked you to do, and then you become another person, and you begin to act in these ways that are unfounded. So this work dealt with these ideas of what it is to have violence with others. What is the phenomena of violence? Why do we do that? And through these objects, but also through the movement of fighting, we could really look at the phenomenon as how it sounds like a battlefield, how it looks to have a body doing it, and what the objects are saying in turn. And I just think I've been thinking more about agentic mode because it's like what we're seeing now in a lot of the crises that are happening around the world, where people are now, they don't care about who they're hurting. They're just moving forward in a nationalistic mindset. This was performed in lots of different locations, and every time kind of growing and changing. And I'm going to show a little clip of this. It might be kind of loud. So wait, it's 35 minutes in total, but I'm going to show a 4-minute clip of this building.
Wartime calls for an adaptation, a shift out of normal living. When the death of loved ones or the others become a regularity, and even intended goal, the previous social rhetoric no longer applies. Being in proximity to death, torture, lack of resources, and general uncertainty transforms behavior to focus on personal selfish survival. Being on the defense rather than the victimized. The designation of offender and victim trade off amongst each group as their continual actions provide reasoning for retaliation. The phenomena of judicious payback, a self-fulfilling prophecy that continues the fighting. In war times, it's difficult to separate what happened from what seemed to happen. What seems to happen becomes its own happening, and it has to be told that way. The angles of fusion are skewed, and then afterwards, when you go to tell about it, there's always that real seemingness, which makes the story seem untrue, but which in fact represents the hard and the exact
a war going on outside. No man is safe from. You could run, but you can't hide forever from these streets that we done took. You're walking with your head down, scared to look. You shook, 'cause ain't no such thing as halfway crooks. They never around when the beef cooks in my part of town. It's similar to Vietnam. Now we all grown up and old and beyond the cops' control. They better have that riot gear ready, trying to bag me and get rock steady. By the Mac 1 double, I touch you and leave you with not much to go home with. My skin is thick, 'cause I be up in the mix of action. If I'm at home, Buffalo, relaxing, New York, got us silly depressed. So I wear slug underneath my guess. God bless my soul. Before I put my foot down, There are
and begin
texts
to
that I
stroll
wrote. There are
to the
texts
drum
from
I wrote, then
psychological
I'll finish beat you
books
through
or
till we're
psychology
together.
books.
It's like
And then
mixing vodka
there's
and
also a song
rum
by
down blasting,
Mobb Deep.
taking my
And
enemies
so
with
we're
me and
combining all the
not
sounds
these
together
scars
to
will never
create
forget
a
me.
cacophony of what
Lord,
it feels
forgive
like
me.
in these
The
moments of
Hennessy got me
violence.
not knowing
How
how
are
to
we
act.
experiencing
I'm
it?
falling
And
and I
how
can't turn
does
back. Well,
when
maybe
violence
it's the
occurs to
words
us,
from
how
my
does
man
it
killer
become
back
its
that I
own
can't
memory?
say, so it's
We
like
can
an
say
untold
this,
fact.
this
Until my
happened in
death,
this order,
I
but
goes
we
to
might
stay
experience it
alive.
in a completely different
Survival,
scenario.
only the
So this
strong
was a buildup
survive.
of 30 to 40 minutes. Of course, in performance, there is no documentation that can ever really do things justice, and so this is like all the audios together. And I think I often work in this way, where I embed myself into the thing that I need. And talking about like how I grew up, there's like all these things that I feel like are missing. Maybe there's like part of a warrior spirit. Maybe there's part of like an herbal spirit. There are things that need to be addressed. In my work, there's also, there's always a workshop element to things as well. So this is also a workshop that I taught along with the performance. During the pandemic, I think everyone was looking for ideas of healing or afterlife. And I came across this reading called Flower Mountain, Concepts of Life, Beauty, and Paradise Among the Classic Mayan. And it's a writing by Carl Taub. And in it, it describes like this afterlife space where, you know, growing up religious, we think that we have to act certain ways, to have certain ethics to reach heaven, right? But really, like in sort of natural cycles, everyone's going to pass away, you know, and it's more of a natural thing outside of out of these moralities. And so Flower Mountain became this sign to me, and it's literally a place where flowers rain and we burn incense, and it is marked by this architectural figure. I think this is when I first began to like really look into sort of like Mexican Indigenous cosmologies as sort of like a central focus away from the fight-based things. I think that I don't know, I needed to like change. Like to fight all the time creates then someone that's only thinking about fighting, you know? So what is the like underlayer? What needs to be there? What is the thing that like holds us to the world? And so this is the first exhibition, and this happened in recess, and it was more of an experiment where I was just making objects, ritual-based objects, trying to like emulate this idea of Flower Mountain. I'm really intrigued with like, what is the texture of something? Again, with the other piece, we're seeing like sound to talk about violence. And with this, I was thinking like, what are the objects in order to like emulate this idea of Flower Mountain? So I built this like smoke box where we were able to act like light and then just see the smoke like create this space where it just filled up and completely. It actually like was really intense because it was so smelly. But I think like again, if we're thinking about the transcendental, I think sometimes I want to see it. Like there's something about it that is like tangibly like, but where is it? How is it? And so this was a series of paintings, performative objects, and then ceramics. And so then this ceramic piece is a flower offering, and so like it would get dressed every day with different flowers. And flowers will come up again. You know, I think that flowers are very important. Every single culture is a place of offering. Again, in the pandemic, I want to build outside. But to be able to build outside, I mean, okay, so I think that I'm the kind of person that like has an idea, but then has to think through all the ways of doing it, where I'm like, maybe I'm a performance maker, but let's make some bricks, you know? Like my research always heads somewhere else and creates sites or experiences or objects that I can then make performance within, but I can't really make the performance until I understand those objects. And so I want to build one of these like flower mountain monuments. And we thought about making it in ceramic, but then what's like, we see this problem with monuments now that are made out of like metal. It's like something that's so permanent. We don't believe that anymore, you know? So I thought that it would be more important to make something that was tangible, like that was made out of the kind of material that honored the same kind of ritual, but also would last only as long as we took care of it. So I learned to make bricks. Over a summer, we made like 300 bricks in Pilsen, in the El Paseo community garden space. I knew nothing about doing this, and so it was like starting from the ground up and experimenting with how to do it. I would say now that I'm kind of an expert, but it's soil, sand, straw, and water. We were mixing by hand to make each one of these bricks. We made these molds and then we'd leave it outside, and then over a period of time then created this, this altar. We thought of it as sort of like a place where people can come visit and sit and think with their thoughts or burn items. We ended up dancing in this space at times too, and I think it's the background for like other projects. I've seen people post photos like reading poems in front of it. I was like, oh, cool, there it is. But yeah, it's called Xochiotiwa, and it's the word is just like the smell, the tinge of flowers. There was another one that was also built in Franconian Sculpture Park. I will say that both of these, like, I would build them different now because they're really fragile. This is the second take of it because the day I left the original structure, it was hit by a tornado. So this is the second iteration of it, and now neither of them exist. Both of them have been returned to the ground. I think in my mind I thought, oh, we'd always work on it, or I'd like be there, but it became difficult to really take care of them. They are like their bodies. Again, in every, like I feel like there's always three parts. There's always a performance, there's some kind of object, and there's workshops. And so we partnered with Narware. We partnered with Narware and El Paseo and Papolatzin Healing Collective to provide different kinds of programming that went along with this. But I think that, like, just to take a moment, I think programming continues to be something that I think that I like delve into. This is a series called Fire Feast, where we make food in an open fire in New York. And I think that, like, living in city spaces, Chicago's not quite like this, but living in like New York, you can't have giant open fires. You can't have rituals. You can't do those things unless you own land or you're really rich. So like we continue to make programmings where people can have experiences with ritual in public spaces. This is an incense workshop that I did with Dee Rosen. So going back to performance. They all kind of, I don't know how to talk about it, but I think Flower Mountain led to a different kind of flower, which was a tobacco. And I was thinking, what is my ritual? I understand like what the rituals can be for like a larger community, but what is my ritual? And when I was in grad school, I began to smoke a lot of cigars because I was really stressed. And tobacco has a long history in the Latin American community, and often it does a good job of mirroring the way that people have been industrialized or have been enslaved at times, or what the work labor looked like. So I spent a few years learning about the history of tobacco. I have so many videos of like guys rolling tobacco though, or cigars. I was looking at it the other day and I was like, this one's from Tampa, this one's from New York, this one, you know. So it was meant to be part of this performance called fire drilling. This was like a name that was chosen before I actually knew what that term meant, but it was this idea of like, how do we relate dance to this ritual object? And we're just gonna watch a little bit of this. Yeah.
The spirits of the mythological beings, those from the beginning, who visibly manifest as game animals in the forest, causing danger to those unprotected. They became envious of humanity. They overtook the tobacco woman. They harmed her to stop her strength. She no longer behaved as she used to. She could no longer live with the man. She left. Let me clarify. The mother, she was harmed, and she declared out, "Man, this is none of your business. It is mine. It's I who was raped, and now I'm searching." Before leaving the man, she promised to return. For her return, he must sweep the house, piling up the dirt under the peach palm. He swept, but she would not return. In dreams, she spoke to him to look into the dirt pile. Watching carefully, he saw a plant emerging, a tobacco plant growing from the pile. She taught him how to use the tobacco leaves, adding vegetable slime to thicken, using vegetable salt to mix it for tobacco paste. She had paramount power over all those who attempted to debase her. She became a hunter, a devourer. Her menstrual blood became a weapon in the form of tobacco paste against the envious spirits.
This performance mixes origin stories, specifically Amazonian tobacco origin stories, with then different dances that are occurring in Mexico, so this is folklorico. In some ways, it's like the beginning of it. It's mostly like improvisational, but bringing together like these different items for ideas of like ritual, along with music that LA space around. I think after this work, I felt as though I didn't really know enough. I think sometimes I'll make a work and I'll be like really excited about the shapes or the images, but there'll be like actual research that didn't feel completed. And so this was like a starting off point.
The spirits of the mythological being.
So what followed next was sort of like the desire to actually know more of the indigenous cosmologies and the ancestral knowledge around sort of like Mexican groups, but then more specifically in Nahua. So this is where pieces of fire drilling became something else. I felt as though I needed a collaborator. Yeah. So this is Iopocatzin, the venerable tobacco smoke. So Iopocatzin, that is the Nahua word, and then the venerable tobacco smoke is, in fact, its translation. So this is just like a sample image. So I think these are the kinds of like images that I was interested in, but then there was like, what is the backstory that goes with it? So this work was with the collaborator, Isayo Masawali, who is here. I'm really excited that you're here. And this work was wanting to focus more on ceremony. What is like, where does tobacco fit within the Tonopowali? And how can we use actual like Nahua dances or Azteca Chichimeca or Mitzolotzin? Is that how I say it? Yeah, yeah, dance form. And so this was a performance that became more of a ceremony. And this was actually performed at the Xochitl. Together we created, like I felt like this was really collaborative, but at the same time I felt like I always get to be like the boss in a lot of my work, and it was nice to sort of like take a different role, where Isayo was mostly the boss in this one, and it was nice to have someone sort of format so that I could imagine what performance could look like in a different manner. So this had 2 different dances, right? I'm trying to remember all the pieces of it. It's like only 2 years ago, but it still feels odd. But we had 2 different dances, one that was based in fire, tlet, and then the second one was a Tezcatlipoca dance. In this desire of wanting to talk about tobacco, we realized that we would have to put it with the ancestral knowledge, and Tezcatlipoca seemed to be like the best fit because they are an entity that revolves around ancestral memory, chaos, inner subconscious. And I realized that maybe some of the things that I was searching for, some of the things that I had been looking for in previous performances were really being told through this sort of like entity or potential deity's backstory. This was performed in different places. We did it at El Paseo, we did it at Jardín Malinali, and also in Minnesota at Franconian Sculpture Park. I think often in performance we think about things in different kinds of steps, but this was really interesting because we had to do things based in ceremony. How does this progress? How can we tell about the story with the right objects? And Isayo taught me these dances, and then he played the wewet, and yeah, it seemed to break from previous projects. Did you want to say anything about it?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, these are like the dances that are part of our tradition that have been danced, some say, since the pre-Hispanic times. So through the movements, we get to learn a lot about the natural cycles, the agricultural cycles, different lessons that we get from animals, astronomical information. So each movement is part of a symbolic language that conveys knowledge. So because this particular performance was about the smoke, for us there's an entity that we call Tezcatlipoca, which is the smoke that comes out of the obsidian mirror that we see there, which represents our ancestral memory, our psyche, our subconscious. So it's like we're entering through that portal, which is the obsidian mirror, to try to decipher the smoke. Because in our tradition as well, we're never really able to see the true reflection of something. There's always smoke in between. But it's in that smoke that we get to understand the mysterious, or we get to learn more about ourselves. So it's a very, very beautiful ceremony.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the way you described that, because I feel like in that smoke or in that chaos of trying to describe things is where I continue to find myself. Yeah, in my last performance that we'll look at in a second, I was like, oh, that's very Tezcatlipoca. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just confused, or not confused, but like in a smoky scenario, or in the obsidian mirror. I think this is like just an aerial shot of one of the performances. So again, there was the desire for it to be outside because these ceremonies should occur outside. And it combined some of the previous work with the folklórico. Here's that part. But for time, I'm going to move forward. And I think after we did that, we realized that we had put some of the folklórico part, but there was the desire for it to be a little bit more removed from ceremony and from the folklórico part. And what could we make just on its own? And this is just like a working title, how I talk about it. But we wanted it to be related to Tezcatlipoca. If we're thinking about like ceremony as material, what are the objects we could play with in a similar performative way? And there were so many objects that like we could experiment with. And so here's the obsidian mirror. And in the performance, it would be dark and we'd have it lit on us. And we were able to like put the reflected light onto the viewer's face. And it's like often when we look at the obsidian mirror, we're looking at ourselves, but it's really hard to look at oneself. You have to really be like engaged with it. And at times I've looked at it and my face looked crazy. And that's part of the trick that's happening. And so we're reflecting that onto the viewers. And this also changed because there was also the our desire to change roles. You're smiling. This was cute, right? This was a fun day. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this is at Performance Space New York, and we performed with a series of other Indigenous performers, and it was really incredible, actually, to be on that bill. And then I think, Eileen, you shot most of these. So these are just like, there isn't any documentation for these that is like real, which I'm kind of cool with. Oh, no, there is actually, but, and in this one, we're dancing together and we're like being mirrors of one another. We realized that I think in the collaboration, one thing that I really enjoy about it is finding the other body. Like, where do you fit? How do you fit with one another? And I think in our collaboration, we found that I often represent Tezcatlipoca, and then he represents Quetzalcoatl, which is knowledge and like leadership and all these combined things. So there are two brothers that are constantly at war with one another. And it's fun to play that. It's fun to play chaos. It's fun to play fighting as a way to then talk about, again, our ancestral past, or talk about like indigeneity. There's all these stories that are related to being Mexican that aren't just like, Christian. There are lots of really beautiful, deep stories. So I'm going to go quickly because I know how am I on time? Oh, I have like 10 minutes? Yeah, cool. So I think, again, I like constantly am sort of searching for like what are the things that I need, or I guess like what are the skills that are needed to like understand my practice and then understand my role within, the Tonopoali or within the spirituality. And being in New York, I want to have a relationship with land, and I began to look for natural clays. This is a retreat that I did with a group of youth where we went and harvested natural clays. And from it came this exhibition where we also built a land altar. But we were, again, thinking about, like, what is our relationship to land? How do we make that relationship for ourselves with the ground itself? Clay is a body the same way that our body is a body. And from this process, like, I've gone to New Jersey and I have some toxic clay that's like covered in gas. And then I have this clay that's this red clay from Denniston Hills and the Catskills. And then there's this other clay in Long Island. And each one is really unique, and it has to do with the pressure that it was in and the minerals that were in it, and it created a specific body, which is similar to like who we are. So this is an exhibition that is more like about sort of like Let's think about like the little trinkets or things that we keep, or how do we like actually think about this relationship? And all the items made to make the bricks or to make the ceramics were then shown as the art itself. This is my exhibition as the soloist, but also it's not, because it's a community exhibition made by a bunch of students. This is a land altar to the Catskills. So I've spent so much time in the Catskills, and I was thinking like, perhaps it would be nice to build a portal where they can come visit us in the city, and then like we could open this portal and like give moments of thanks or give moments of friendship, and then we return the clay back. This also was with a series of performances of live clay making, and then we had like a water vessel making course and ceremony. And this is like the last show I'll talk about. I have one more performance, but this show it was in March, so I'm still sort of trying to figure out what it means. It's called I Brought You Flowers, o Te Traje Flores. You know, it's interesting to talk about what I've done with my life, because I'm like, oh yeah, that's funny. But I think that like in the original, and like how I started was within ideas of like diaspora. There's also like forms of like forced assimilation, and then there's the desire to rebuild what those connections are. And I think that like in the strength building or learning how to fight, that was for protection. But then I realized that in the ancestral practices, that was a different kind of protection, and that a body needs many things. You know, I can't just like be an MMA person and go fight someone. That's not going to like maybe heal parts of being disattached. And in this project, I was thinking a lot about like, what's left? What are the things that are left that I haven't done that are still like needing to be done maybe in my own journey? And I was thinking a lot about like maternal lines and what it means to like forgive people or to give people their flowers before they die. So it's called I Brought You Flowers. It's a series of floral plates that I made at the Kohler residency. And these are like from the Flower Mountain drawings. And so these are like very specific flowers that are raining from the sky. And then here we have our altarpiece again, with flower offerings. And I think like, I'm just like I guess I'm like in a place where I don't know this, how do I talk about this? Okay, so it's my turn to give flowers. And so this is a video that I did with my mother, where I essentially gave her all her flowers before she dies.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of flowers. Oh, thank you. I love them. Is there more? I just don't know. Oh my gosh. I have more?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Let's put these around like,
How should we put them on?
So if I can find my place in cosmology, then what is the generational lines that I need to also heal, or in order to like move forward, how do I need to move back? And so, yeah, I bought her $500 of flowers, and we didn't tell her what was happening. And a friend of mine was saying, like, oh, it looks like she's being buried by flowers. And I thought, like, what are these well wishes that we need to give people before it's too late, you know? So they can like feel those moments of like gratitude. And often we remember the things that people did that we don't like. Like, you didn't let me go hang out with my friends when I was little or whatever. But it's like, no, like we don't need to hold those things. Like in this idea of like natural cycles of things that we let go, even destruction can be something positive. I mean, in nature, not in like things that, genocide is not natural. But like in these entities, death can be something positive. It's part of a natural cycle. And so how can we honor those things even before they've occurred? So again, there are these portals that are built throughout the space to recognize flowers or sky, to consider this flower mountain yet again. And this is the last thing I'll talk about. So thinking about maternal lines, I think that like when I think about diaspora, or when I think about being Mexican or brown, I also think about the people that at times seemed ashamed of it, or were having a hard time, so they weren't always like the most joyous people. And this is this last work is called "Para qué, perdón que no fue pedido." It's like "para qué" is a thing my grandmother would say all the time. We'd be like, oh, like, okay. So one time we were driving from here from Salt Lake to California, and my grandma would pee on the side of the road, and because she like had the smallest bladder, and like one time we were stopped on the side of the road, and you know, like you pee on this side of the car and the door opens so no one can see you, but she peed on this side of the car. Like people were honking and we're like, oh my God, stop. And we're like, why'd you do that? She's like, "Para qué?" Like, who the fuck cares, you know? Like she just was over it. And so I thought that this line made sense. And then this idea of perdón que no fue pedido, which is like a weird line, is like, sometimes people don't ask for forgiveness. They don't need your forgiveness. But it is a pleasure to try to move forward and give it to people, to like move forward together. So, so this work was largely about my grandmother and my mother. And it's this really bizarre performance where, like in the past, I've been really like, oh, it needs to look cool. We need to do this. We need to do that, to like be performance art. But this performance was mostly for myself. So it's a wild performance. Eileen's in this one too. I don't think we have a photo, but it essentially is like talking through, like again, ideas of sort of like diaspora and combining clay to make little pots and vessels that represent family. And then we move into like this weird 9 Inch Nails song about my childhood, which is again letting go of shame, letting go of like bodily things. You know, I don't know if you noticed, but in the previous performance, I do try to look a certain kind of way, and I was like, no, let's be silly, you know. And so thinking about like childhood in all these different manners, and so there's a video I'm going to show, and this comes after that video. So we're going to talk about like, I'm going to show like, it's like a 10-minute film, maybe we can like do it shorter, but it's like this story about my childhood, and then the performance goes after that into like these series of fantasies, where we're seeing like me do this dance out of a trash bag, and then a series of cats coming out of the trash bag telling about their lives. I promise it, well, it might not make sense. But I think like there's this desire that I have now where I feel like I've completed all these like things. Oftentimes, like when we make art, they can be based in kind of wounds, or they can be based on the motivations we need to have to like get to the place we want. And I think I'm just like at this place where I'm trying to make things that are silly, or that are like tell the stories that I hope for without like the need for the previous like motivations. And so we'll end with this film, and then we can go into questions. Ja? Oh, I should say that there is mention of animal harm, and then there is maybe things that might seem like youth humiliation. That's what I would call it.
Hi, Mom.
Hi.
Are you okay?
Yeah,
Okay. Sorry that I surprised you before.
that's okay.
Yeah. I guess there are some memories about Grandma about Abuelita Emma, que son como, that are like more strong in my memory of her. And I think they're like, some of the memories aren't necessarily good. I think that they kind of stick out because they're confusing to me. Because, like, I remember that, like, when I was, I don't know, like 6 to 8, I don't remember exactly how old I was, but that I was having a bedwetting problem. And it's a problem that, like, I had for a long time. And you and I keep going back and forth about where it happened, whether it was at our house or at Grandma's house. But Grandma had to like we had to share a bed with her, like me and I think Mari and probably Monique with grandma. And we weren't looking forward to it because she snored really, really loud.
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
I do too.
Do you? No, you don't.
I think I do. Because I've caught myself, like, when I snore really loud, I wake up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me.
Yeah, and I remember one time she was just being like, I don't want to get your pee on me. I don't want to wake up all wet. And it it made me feel bad, And she was like, well, you're going to have to sleep in a trash bag. And I thought she was joking. And then she wasn't, and she brought one out for me to sleep in. And I don't know, I was kind of humiliated, And I kind of felt like, I don't know, I felt singled out, and I kind of felt like no one stood up for me. And I thought about it since then, kind of like, oh, why didn't you do something? But I felt like maybe you were busy or you didn't know what was happening, and maybe we've talked about it. But it almost feels like it wasn't real, because I also have this memory that, like, while I was sleeping in the bag, like, I could hear her rhythmic snoring, and it sounded almost like, and it almost sounded like jazz music or something rhythmic. I don't blame you for it. It's just something that I think happened and feels like almost, I don't know, it's just like when I was younger, it made me feel bad. And, but at the same time, it just feels like a dream now. It just feels like something sort of pretend. Because there's also, like, Grandma was obsessed with bags. Like, I feel like all my stories about Grandma are, like, about bags.
Yes, I do know what you mean. Because everything, I'm like, Mom, where'd you put that? Oh, and then that bag over there. I'm like, oh, gosh. I mean, I know what you mean.
Would she save them and, like, wash them out?
She would save them, but she'd always be putting stuff in bags. Like, if she found something, she'd just put it in a bag. And so, yeah, she was like, I guess I don't know why she had.
Like, the other story too about Grandma and the bags. I remember one time we went to visit her, and kind of it was a little bit hard to visit Grandma because she, like, lived in a neighborhood that was really different than ours. Like, we lived in the suburbs of Utah, but Grandma lived in Fresno, and I don't know, the neighborhood kind of felt a little hard. And it was also hard because I kind of sometimes felt bad for her, or, like, couldn't totally connect to her world because we were a bunch of, like, everyone always thought that we were so weird because we were, like, Mexican American nerds, Like, we had Pokemon t-shirts and things like that when it was very not cool to do that. And I just remember that we were just really nerdy. And so, like, I remember one time, maybe around the same age, I remember we came to her house, and, like, in her yard there were a bunch of kittens. Like, a cat had a bunch of kittens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were really excited about it, and we were all picking one up and pretending like, oh, this is my kitten, or this one's mine. And we were, like, choosing which ones were which. And Grandma got mad at us because they were, like, pests, I guess, because they weren't her cats, but they were, like, living on her yard.
Oh.
Yeah. And then she picked them all up and then put them in a plastic bag and tied it. And then she put it on the doorknob of her house. And yeah, I just remember being really scared. And, like, I just remember not knowing why that was happening.
Yeah. I think that I remember that, but I don't remember. I think that I wasn't with you outside.
I think we went and got you because everyone was like, you know, like how in cartoons when they're like they have ring an alarm. I think we were all crying and we were all really upset. And
Oh,
I think me or Marty or someone went to go get you because we're like, Grandma's being crazy.
and what did
Abuelita. What?
I didn't do anything?
You don't remember?
Well, I just remember that I think you guys told me that, but I don't remember what I did.
I think you told Grandma she can't do that.
Oh, good. But did she do it anyway? Because she doesn't listen to me. I mean, she wouldn't listen to me. Like
Well,
I said, it's her house, and she would do anything she wanted at her house, you know.
yeah. Well, in this
Uh-huh.
instance, we were really upset. You know, I think Marty probably was, you know,
So,
stressed
yeah,
because
yeah.
Marty cares about animals a lot, and so she was really upset. And we were at Grandma's house, which meant that we didn't have rights, you know, but we were all
Yeah.
crying and we were all upset. And we ran to we ran to you and we told you, and I think you were kind of shocked. I think you were kind of grossed out too and kind of
Um,
freaked out. And then you went and told her, like, I don't think, like, you can't, like, I don't know what you told her, but you took them out.
oh, she did? Oh, thank you. I can't remember. Honestly, I don't remember. Um, okay, so I do remember that it was upsetting. I think that I do remember that you came to tell me, and I couldn't believe she did that. I
Really?
had, I had never seen her do that. I'm glad I did something because I'm surprised that she even listened to me.
Well, like, she did, but then she said, like, para qué? You know, like, it's when you guys leave, I'm going to put them back in. She said something like that. And so I
Oh,
remember when we left, I just felt like a pit in my stomach, you know? Like, I just felt scared for them and I hope that they were okay.
yeah.
And I think about it, you know, that was like 30 years ago and I still.
You know what? I'm sorry. I mean, I feel like maybe I just did that one thing, but um, like you said that she said para qué. Uh, Maybe we should have like put free kittens or something, you know,
Sí.
to make sure that she wouldn't do that. I mean, I didn't. I guess I didn't realize, or I didn't stop to think about it, or I didn't hear that she said that. We could have probably called the SPCA, you know,
I guess
and
so.
have them pick them up, you know. Like one time when you were born, Marcel, she came and I'm like, Mom, I'm feeding the baby. I was feeding you. And she's like, yeah, but the food is ready. And I'm like, well, I can't get up. I'm breastfeeding. And she's like, okay. And then she brought the food and she was spoon feeding me while I was feeding you.
She was feeding her baby and you were feeding your baby.
And I was feeding my baby you.
Yeah, so these stories were the root of the performance, and thinking about how we think of maybe traumatic stories of our past as ways to build speculative futures. And the performance continues as like a series of what would have happened if the cats lived and what would their lives be like, as a way to like, dream a possible future for these people, you know. And I think in this way of playing with the past as history, or history as present, or as Tony Moore says, like rememory, like there's ways in which we can disentangle ourselves from possible traumas by building other possibilities. Anyways, thank you all.
Cool. Questions for Marcela?
I don't have a question, but I was thinking about, like, I mean, I'm
cool. It's cool to hear because I really think that there's a lot of power within like ceremony, and every culture has it. It's just like our ability to like connect with it. I work on other projects like in relationship to like how do we connect to those ceremonies, and my partner is somebody who's Indian, you know, and so then like there's all these different ceremonies that can be specific to the group. Yeah. Sorry. Any other questions?
Are you looking at any like performances that might be coming up, or any ideas for future projects?
I have something that I'm sorry, but yes. I'm supposed to go to like I think Michigan State to do a performance the day after the presidential election around the parable of the sower. Yeah, and so they're asking people to do performances like around ideas of grieving or ceremony. And I haven't decided what I want to do because I'm kind of freaked out. Yeah, so then I was like, do we fit there? Do I, like, what do I do? Because we might not know the election result. And it's like a strange thing to perform right then, but that's the thing that I'm working on next. Yeah.
Could you talk about the choreography of your performances, especially in the early videos? Part of it feels like a choreographed movement. It feels like a dance, and it looks like a dance.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk about the making of that and the feeling of being on stage and performing it?
Yeah, I think that I work in algorithms, or like having sort of like parts that are set choreography and then parts that are improvisational, because I think that like I think it's important to have moments of like mistake or having the body just kind of do stuff, you know, in order to like highlight those choreographed parts. So in older work, it's a series of like games essentially, where it's like, okay, this piece of this game is like we do this, but then in this other part of the game we're going to be scared. So like be scared or whatever. And so then there's different goals in each one. I think in our performances, those are like maybe the most choreographed, because the dances are very specific. And their movements they don't have to be like perfect, but there is a desire for it to be as well done as possible. So those are specific choreographed things. And so like in this most recent work, I worked with a choreographer and we did choreographed pieces, but I don't think I'm a body that can be like rigid. So there's the choreography. When we do dances, that's like the most detailed I am, because like in all the other things there's just the desire that where I'll like put like a roll on, but then it'll still be me sort of like fucking it up. Yeah.
Still working on the question, so I'm just gonna try to ask it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you talk about like your ancestors came from Mexico. They moved to Utah. You kind of grew up in Utah. You went to school in Chicago. You moved to New York. Like you have like you moved a lot. And I find like you connect to place a lot in your work. But like, do you have like what is your like connection to like a specific place, like a home, or like do you have like a constant, I guess, that you're
This is really funny. I think I'm nomadic at spirit. Yeah, and I think that has been a huge challenge. But I think what I realized, I'm ancestrally nomadic. I think that I don't have like a groundedness. I think I'm supposed to move from place to place, and I'm supposed to, like any place I go, I'm supposed to have a connection to. But what works for me, like on a personal level, is I built like a spider web, and I have many homes, and I have many families. And so then, like the Kalpuli I am in with them, in Rodrigo, that's a home. And so I realized that my homes are in a nest constellation where I will return over and over again to like continue my relationship with those locations and with the land and with the people. But I don't know how to stop moving. Yeah.
I tell you, you just gave me chills. Like I love that so much.
Yeah. But I do have a tip So I was telling someone the other day, whenever I travel, I take some of my bed with me. Like you take a sheet or something. That's what they do with small dogs when they like take it to their homes. And so I'm the small dog, and I just like take like my sheets with me, and then you remember the smell of wherever you go. Yeah. You're welcome. Cool.
This is not really a question, but when you were presenting about tobacco, and really thinking about ritual processes that are related to healing, the one thing that came to mind was thinking about the meaning of tobacco within the American identity today, like thinking about how it was a cash crop, like it was one of the major first cash crops that the colonists used to trade and use slave labor for it. You know? And that's one thing I was really thinking about, like thinking about how it was cultured and cropped on the East Coast, but then you bring this other history to it that I wasn't familiar with. And it seems like two clashing sides, but I don't know what to make of it.
Any medicine becomes a poison if you use too much of it, right? So then like a tobacco was something that was used in ceremony and not all the time. But like it's extreme industrialization and the way that people can smoke it all the time in these sort of unregulated formats, that is like such a good representation of like the colonization we've experienced, you know? And so, yeah, there is a duality in it. Because I like when I did a bunch of research on like cigar production, it's really interesting, but a lot of it had to do with like monasteries. And so like the people that worked there had to work there, and it was mostly women, but they were under like such intense regulation where it was like a prison, you know, but this is their ancestral like medicine. You know, so but at the same time, like in Cuba and in Florida, they had lectores, so somebody would be reading to people as they worked, and so those people became like politicized. They read the most incredible books. They were so well read. They would have fights about what like next book they were going to read together. And so then like it's this, I think it's such a good representation of these things because of course there's like this beautiful community-based thing where they were able to basically fund Jose Marti in Cuba, but yeah, they were also like under extreme scrutiny. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting duality.
I'm interested in your distinction, like you distinguishing that you have to, or like previously you were thinking about like dressing up or costuming for a performance, or acknowledging that you felt the need to costume or dress up or to make performance art.
Mm-hmm.
And then also like that in contrast to, doing a performance for yourself. I'm curious to know sort of like where is the line for you, and sort of where, like, are you constantly performing, or is it sort of, where is the line between like intention?
Yeah, I think it is like straight about the intention because you could be like really dressed up and still be like, no, but that's just because I feel that way, you know? And so then I think it's like the intentionality of like what is your audience and what the goal for that audience is, right? So then like, but that's even complicated too because like in the last work I did want people to see it. Yeah. So in the ceremonial work, that was something where we need to represent like certain entities. So like the dress had to be specific. And it's also like telling parts of history to people that might not know it, right? So then that part seemed important as opposed to this other work where I feel like was mostly self-funded, where the line was like, it still is for an audience and still for people to learn, but like it isn't, I guess like that's not part of its characteristics to be performative in that manner. Even though they're still costuming. I don't know, it's kind of a tricky one. Because I can see the line, but I can't explain it. Yeah. I don't know. Because I think people are always performing. And there's something like exhibitionist about wanting to be a performance maker because there's the desire, or there's like, this is how I can communicate. So maybe it's a communication device. But yeah, that's not really an answer, but that's what I have. Yeah.
Thank you, Marcela.
Cool, thank you. Gracias, Mati, a todos. Thank you for coming. Yeah.